On this episode of Campfire Stories, a conversation about story for B2B brands with the head of digital commerce and marketing at Veritiv Corporation, Melissa Minihan.
I mean, the biggest conflict I have is we're a B2B business. We don't tell stories to customers. And what I say is, of course you do.
Hi, everyone, and welcome again to Character Campfire Stories. I'm Jim Hardison, co-founder and creative director of Character LLC. Today, I'm really pleased to have as my guest, Melissa Minihan. Melissa, can you tell me about your current role and share a little bit of your background?
Sure. I am currently at a company called the Veritiv Corporation. You probably never heard of it, but we are a very big packaging company. We also do facility solutions and a little bit of print. We are a distributor, and we're mostly a business to business company. I have a lot of business to business background and various brands. I've been in apparel, and then I've also been in home improvement in various categories doing B2C and B2B.
We actually met for the first time working on Stainmaster when you were at Invista.
We did. That was a B2C business. So I think this will be my fourth time working with you officially, although through the years, I feel like we've definitely been on and off when I've been asking you questions. I think my background is I have a tech background, not a marketing background. So I've had to learn marketing along the way, and I'm not a traditional marketer. So I need a lot more help. And so I've really relied on character to help me through that.
One of the things that's actually been a ton of fun in working with you on Story is that you've always taken a very scientific or engineering approach to it.
I think it's probably because I've been in businesses that don't have big marketing budgets. And so we've always had to think about how structured we want to roll this out, how to sell this internally.
I think a lot of times when people don't have a huge budget, they think the first thing that they can ignore really is going in depth into the story. It's like there are bigger fish to
Yeah.
fry and other problems to worry about.
Most of the time it's hard in a B2B business because what they say is we don't sell to a consumer. So like we're not going to go in and tell a story. And you really have to bring it back to how are you using the story to influence your strategy and your business and your culture? Because really, in a B2B business, your salespeople are probably your first line of defense. So your story really has to resonate with those people versus commercials or social media or other things where the brand team controls your story. So I think the hardest part and actually the most challenging and exciting is when you have story at a B2B business, everyone has to buy into it. And you create this guardrail for them and this belief. You're almost returning them to their roots and reminding them of what made the company or the product so great in the first place.
That's excellently said. I think the audience really wants to know why you'd be better at doing what you're doing than somebody else would be. And that's that place, when you talk about your salespeople on the front line.
Absolutely. The sellers out in the field are the people that those are our customers really, and that we are trying to make sure they understand and feel comfortable selling. We're selling distribution services. We don't even make products.
Mhm.
And so what makes us unique and how do we think about that in a packaging industry? And we sell to everyone, to Boeing, to Lululemon, to a food producer, or a pet food producer. We sell to everyone, and so it's a very different sell. And so why did you do business with Veritiv? What kind of people are we? What do we offer? Those are the things that we were trying to arm them with. Not just talking about price, not just talking about supply chain, but really what we mean as a company and what is the magic of what we do, which is told through story. We talk about it. I mean, we just launched something company wide, a marketing program, or I don't even like to say it's a marketing program. It's just a way in which we sell program. It's called the Veritiv Edge, and it's about provable, quantifiable differentiation that backs up the story or the magic because everybody says the same things or the same catchphrases. It's how you do that and back it up that creates that trust.
Mhm.
And so we talk about it all the time is that that's really important. And how we go to market through story, through backing it up. It's the magic of that that really makes you competitive.
Yeah, and that's another great point. I think, sometimes when people are thinking about story, they're thinking about like, oh, well, what's the thing we're going to make up to say to people, not realizing that everything you do that your audience can encounter in any way is really a piece of storytelling.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. I do it in marketing and branding, and then I also do it in technology. And a lot of my storytelling is internal. It's trying to make people understand complicated technical things, but in a what's in it for me way. And I think that's how we think about story and we think about telling our story is, here's who we are and here is what's in it for you as our customer or as the internal person using a technology platform or investing in our company or investing in technology. So I feel like actually most of my job, 80% of my job is probably storytelling and telling the stories of things that we're doing, we want to do, and painting that vision and that picture of what could be.
As you've tried to implement story, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced. Like what gets in the way of trying to use story for your work?
The hardest part is explaining how it works or how you apply it to your business. So, how do you make decisions differently with a story lens? It's not just a marketing template or something on the wall. The one thing I think we've done really well at Veritiv is we use stories to create a new value system that was easier to remember, embrace the story, embrace everything about it. And that has been a fantastic success rolling out. So we created this really neat thing that we all live by in our values. And that I think we have also taken, we created those values to also be something we could use at a customer. So that's the hardest part is getting like how do we actually use this to make money? I mean, truthfully, to make money. That's what we're all here to do, or in a private company you are. And we've weaved what we've done for the brand throughout all of the materials. Our sellers train that way. We created our values with thinking about our character. We just rolled out, like I told you, a big marketing and sales enablement program yesterday to all employees that weaves in. We actually talked about our character a little bit, remembering what we were. And I think that's the hardest part, but also the most rewarding when you see people using those things and those tools that you've created.
Mhm. So it sounds like taking the story and turning it into concrete tools that you can put into use is incredibly important to make it actionable. Is that?
Absolutely. You have to put in, I've worked for, again, I have never been at a CPG led company. So all of my bosses have been finance people by trade, they've come to be leaders or engineers. They are probably the hardest to convince on a marketing story or even that marketing matters. Um, they have a very thoughtful way, a disciplined way of doing things, and oftentimes story or emotions or those type of things don't enter. I've been lucky enough to work with the best ones, and that they have allowed my teams to bring in these types of things. But I also think the way that we have been successful as a team in bringing them to these very analytical leaders are that we tell them how we will implement this to affect the bottom line. We always think about affecting the bottom line. And I had a couple leaders, one who you know very well, Steve Griffith, who used to basically tell me, don't bring me anything without bringing a financial analysis attached with it. And that's really what we do. And I know that sounds crazy to a lot of marketers, but my team doesn't bring anything forward, even talking about doing new values, unless we can create some sort of value and we have it down on paper in an Excel spreadsheet that says this is the kind of money we think we can return. I mean, the biggest conflict I have is we're a B2B business. We don't tell stories to customers. And what I say is, of course you do. A B2B buyer is extremely sophisticated, unlike a B2C buyer. So to me, the story framework actually works more to your advantage because you're not creating as a marketer in a B2B, you're not creating commercials. You're creating strategies, business and sales strategies that frame what you are great at. And you are giving that information to whoever sells that, your inside sales team, your digital commerce team, or your actual feet on the street sellers. And they are going out and telling that story. So you're getting more margin, or you're getting share, or you're doing the things that they care about for their compensation and we care about as a company, for our business metrics. B2B is so special. I used to be like, oh, B2B, I don't want to do B2B. B2C is so much more sexy. And I've done B2C and I loved it. But you are trying to get a seller who salespeople know how to tell a story, or they wouldn't be a salesperson. You're just giving them passion and a reason to show up and a confidence. No salesperson wants to sell on price. Like no one. It is awful. I've been in sales. I was a GM before this role. Nobody wants to do that. So the character work and the storytelling, it's usually very embraced by sellers. I mean, you have to break it down for how they think about what a customer cares about, but they eat it up because that is who they are as, in the heart. They love telling stories.
If there was a single piece of advice that you could share with people in a similar situation about how to activate story or how to get the most out of story, what would that be?
Surround yourself with a team that challenges you. You know, a team that challenges the story as you are coming up with the story. So in every place I've been, I think I've gotten better at this, but recently for the story for Veritiv is we surrounded ourselves with a team of people that were from all over the organization. You know, some of us were marketers, but we were a small portion of the team. We had sales, we had finance, we had corporate comms, we had all different design, we had all different types of people on the team. So my piece of advice is involve a collaborative group.
Can you think of an example, either something you've participated in or something you've just seen, that you consider to be a great activation of story in a brand?
I mentioned this before, but our new values are a great activation of what we've done. I mean, I think that has been, we call it the code. It is four things that are innovations that are very short. And by the way, I challenge any person in marketing or comms, go and look at your values and tell me if you have more than four. Guarantee you 99% of people do. It's very hard to get executives and people to align to a smaller group of values that are uniquely your character. Everyone's going to say operational excellence, but is that really uniquely your character? Everybody's going to say this or that. I really challenge you. It's extremely difficult to be able to do that.
To your point about values, I think very frequently we get, when we're soliciting the background material on brands that we're going to work on, they send us their values and we look at them and say, well, these are kind of generic business values. Like you said, anybody would say that, but it doesn't say anything about who you are uniquely in the world or why you exist, why you're necessary.
We really challenged ourselves with this one when we came up with our values. And it was really hard to leave off some of those, you know, serve the customer the best we can and operational. Like, I mean, everybody can say the same seven. It's really seven or eight things that everybody's going to say the same things. But really, what is it that you stand for? And we came down with four. And I think that was really cool.
I love that the values you came up with have personality inherent in them.
We use your cover the logo and tell me who you are. It's like and I always say to people, it's your DNA. It is who you are. Cover my face, and I guarantee you, if you write down some statements, my team could pick the statements that I said and the pick statements that Jim said. Absolutely. And that's really what you do for a brand.
The insights and experience that you've shared, I think, are going to be tremendously valuable for anybody that watches the Campfire story.
It's great catching up with you, Jim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me for this.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great weekend.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.